Nice to see you all. Thanks for joining. We are going to spend this evening just really using this time to share some updates, some bits and pieces where we are, stuff that's happening as we move forward that we really want to bring you right up to speed on, and give opportunity to both ask questions into that and to pray. So that's why we're doing this evening. Before we get into any one of the areas we want to touch on, I just want to take a couple of minutes just to say, I really do recognise, and as a team, we just recognise that, this is a challenging moment. It's been, I know we keep saying it, but it's true, isn't it? It's been a challenging season, last 18 months that we've gone through, everyone's gone through. And the challenge of working out, where are we? What is a new era? What does it mean for us?
Okay.
It feels very unfamiliar. The change that takes place through these kinds of moments, just God speaking to us, putting things in front of us that we hadn't thought of before, just different perspectives with things as he leads us, and just a challenge really of navigating hard times. We're just really aware of that as a dynamic for us as a church family. And even as we begin to get going in terms of gathering week by week again on Sundays, I'm aware that different ones of us are coming with very different expectations, desires, appetites, and I'm not speaking into that other than just to say I recognise that it is a challenging moment. It's a moment where we just need a whole load of grace for one another. I think that's why I want to say that. It's just we need to be a people full of grace towards one another, recognise people are tired, and just let's be honest, I think a lot of us are all over the place emotionally. We're not even aware of that at times, and so that's just a dynamic of where we are at the moment. And into that also, I recognise for us that as a church, we brought our two sites back together over this time. We haven't for a while talked a whole load about that, but that is where we are and what we've done. And for some people, you might kind of think, oh yeah, I forgot that. Others are kind of living with it, and it's a real emotion, and a thing we're having to process, and just recognizing that again, it's just another point of challenge and of being a point of bumpiness, particularly for, I guess, particularly for those of you who have been in the East and are now back in the West, as it were. It's just another one of those points. So just really wanted to say I'm aware there's dynamics like that going on, and through this season, as is always a normal part of church life, but maybe at the moment it's been on steroids, is that people have moved on. It's been a season when people have moved on. Again, it's just worth putting it out there. It's no secret. It's nothing. It's just one of those moments where people are moving on for all different kinds of reasons, but at the same time, people are joining and connecting in. And again, it's just one of those points where I want to encourage us just to have an abundance of grace towards one another, and to be patient with one another, full of faith, to keep our eyes fixed on Jesus. And the other dynamic for us that I'm aware of is, even as we've kind of got going over these last couple of weeks, is that we don't have serving teams in place. It's all a bit hand to mouth at the moment in terms of particularly as we're gathering on Sundays, but even for things taking place midweek for us. So Al and I have just been talking about youth and how we're serving youth, and for our Sunday gatherings, what about kids and how are we doing that? I was connecting with a group of people, kind of processing how are we going to serve our children moving forward. Hospitality, welcome, stewarding, those kind of teams, none of which are in place at the moment. Groups, we're at a bit of a low ebb with groups. I just recognise that, it's been a season of hard work, and that it's perfectly fine, but a number of people are kind of at this point wanting to lay down groups, leading of groups. And for us as a team, I just recognise, even as we brought the two sites back together, we're at a point where we're just working out and processing together, what does it now look like for us as a leadership team in this moment now, as we kind of learn to be one church again and one site. And so it's just all processing, loads of questions, lots of challenges, lots of dynamics. We've got all of our own emotions mixed into that. And I just want to be real and say, these are challenging times. But the reality is, it's not just us. As I speak to different friends leading churches or involved in churches all over the place, what we're going through is very much what many churches are walking through at the moment. And so I want to just encourage us in that. And through all of that, and through the pandemic, and through all of the bumps and all of the challenges we're facing, I just want to say I really am sensing God's encouragement and his faithfulness to us as a church family. I really do feel that God is for us and he's with us. And that doesn't mean everything's easy, but it means that we can be confident in him and trust him in this season. And I just want to say, we had a trustees meeting last week, and just part of our trustees meeting, we're talking about finances, and I just want to say God has been so faithful to us as a church that through this season he's just provided, and he's provided everything we needed, and I want to say thank you to you as a church for just ongoing generosity and faithfulness. It is really quite astounding, and I know for us as an eldership team and leaders, and for the trustees, we are just amazed at how God has just so faithfully, through, and I recognize that's, through you as a church, through us as a church, he's provided. And I just think it's just an indicator. It's just part of us. It's not by any means the main thing, but it is just an incredible part of our story of this last 18 months, that God has really just met our need financially. And I just think it's something we should honor God for, and just want to say well done and thank you guys. So as we just look at this evening, there's a whole number of bits and pieces that we kind of want to just unpack in around 3 areas. So we're going to focus on 3 distinct areas this evening, and the first will be on partnerships, local partnerships, things that God is doing among us as a church locally. And then partnerships with nations, and just things that we believe God's leading us into in the days ahead, out into the nations. And then finally, we want to finish just with a bit of time talking about prayer and us as a church family, prayer and the priority of prayer for us in this new era. And so in each of these, it will kind of have an inside gateway dynamic and an outside gateway dynamic. But what I want to say right up front is, for us as a church, I feel like God has been speaking to us and leading us as a team with real clarity about becoming and being a church that thinks beyond our own borders and thinks outside of just the immediate of Gateway, and giving us a real sense of confidence in that and faith for what that's beginning to look like. And some of that we'll unpack in just a moment. And so even this evening, as we're talking about local and into the nations, I'm aware that some might be thinking, I thought we were here to talk about Gateway. I thought we were here just to say what's going on, what about groups, and what about serving, and what about what next, and what's happening on Sunday. This sense of looking beyond our borders, I want to say that is who we are as a church. That is what God has put in our hearts, is to help fuel that both locally and into the nations, to not just navel gaze, but to kind of say, come on, there's a town out there, there's a nation out there, there's the nations out there, and we need to fix our eyes on that. And so as we're talking this evening about all of these things, this is us as a church. The reality is that creates a tension for us, because we also want to be a healthy local church. We want to love one another and care for one another and shepherd one another and encourage one another and disciple one another in love and faith and into mission. And we're aware of that. And I just want to say this, I want to be really honest with you guys, that as we've been processing as a team, how do we move forwards now into this new era, as we come back together to be one site, to be a church that's together, not split into 2 sites, as we are faithful to God's leading to us in the days ahead to think beyond our own borders. Mark Owen reminded me recently when I had a coffee with him of the prophetic word that shaped us as a church from kind of day one, that prophetic word was given to the church 30 years ago, by the way, nearly, in 2 months' time, that we are to build locally and think internationally. And just in the course of the coffee, Mark reminded me of that prophetic word, and it really is a DNA thing that from our whole history as a church has been in us, that we want to build locally and think out into the nations. And I just want to say that I'm aware that creates a tension for us to do that work. And it means that at times our focus can be a lot on the nations or on beyond our borders. And that actually as a local church, there are points where we feel the tension of it, and we suffer in different ways. We feel the cost of that. We feel maybe, let's be honest, the lack of shepherding at times. And we're aware of that. And I want to say to you guys, we are aware. We want to, it's something that we really recognize together and before God, and we want to strengthen in the days ahead, that as we move forward, as we get hold of who God's called us to be, we don't want to go look beyond our borders at the expense of us as a local family. We want to increasingly say we want to shepherd one another well. We want to, or particularly as leaders, we want to shepherd the church well. We want to care for one another well. We want to really just grow in that part of who we are. And so I want to recognize that. And just if at points as we've maybe you've felt that and you've been on the receiving end of that at times, I just want to say I'm sorry where that's been a weakness for us, and our heart is to move forward with that. Okay, let's get going on part one. So partnerships local. This will be probably the longest chunk of the evening. I'll try and keep it brief. But over lockdown, earlier this year, in fact, this calendar year, we were feeling that we needed to just write down and clarify what it was that we were living with as a team, what it is that we believe God was speaking to us about, because we realized that there was a lot of things we were kind of chucking out, in the sense of we don't want to go back to how things were. We feel like God's doing something new, and we want to release people into who they are in God. And we were kind of chucking out lots of this kind of rhetoric, kind of just these phrases, believing that's what God's put in our heart, but recognizing actually they're not particularly crystallized and helpful to get hold of at points. And if anything, it can leave people slightly dangling, in the sense of what does this mean? What does this look like? The reality is we've got faith for it, but we don't really know yet. We're learning. We're going to learn as a church. We remember that prophetic word about a new era. The reality is we haven't been this way before. That's so true. And so it's something that we're needing to grow, learn, again, have grace for. But our heart really is to say we do want to move forward in this new era, trusting God, trusting that he's doing a work of renewal in the church, and learning to get hold of that. So we put down on paper 10 points that we feel God is speaking to us about, to begin to crystallize in our thinking what it looks like. And one of those areas for me, this is one of well, in fact, they're all key points, to be honest, but this is something that God has really caught my heart with, that is, I think, so hugely important for the church in our generation, is this, that we would, as a church, we would have a deep, God will get hold of our heart, a deep passion for partnering with others in God's mission. That we wouldn't just think about Gateway and building Gateway and extending Gateway, but we would look to partner with others meaningfully, intentionally in kingdom purpose. So not simply just having nice unity with other churches where we sometimes meet for coffees as leaders and pray for one another, and we just encourage each other with nice words and nice relationships, but that we really believe that God is calling us to find ways to partner together, that we'll share and be generous to one another, we'll resource one another, we'll strengthen one another where we can, that we'll love one another and build relationships. In fact, we'll literally end up preferring one another over ourselves. That's true for us personally in our walk with Jesus in life, but I think that's meant to be true of us as a church family, as a body, that we are to prefer others. And so into that, we feel like God has given us a part to play in the town in helping to see that happen, particularly through Good News for Swindon. And I'm aware that, again, that creates a tension for us, because if our eyes are fixed on, if we've got our gaze lifted beyond our own border, well, how are we looking after us as a church well? And I just want to say, yeah, we need to learn that in the days ahead. I really believe that is part of why it was right to bring the two sites back together. I think that's a key thing, because we were struggling with this before when we were on two sites, to care well and to look beyond our borders. And I genuinely feel that that's a part of why we've brought the two sites back together, to enable us to do the both well. But the reality is, this way of being is going to need us to do a whole load of things to walk into it, to serve beyond our own borders. But the key thing it needs is actually for us as a local church to get hold of that in our heart together. That it's beyond just a leaders thing. It's beyond just a one or two who might have some kind of involvement with other churches. That as a church, we carry a passion that goes beyond our own border. And that's going to take time. I realize that takes time to build that way of thinking and to get a passion for it. But it really is, I guess it's probably, if there was something that defines the way I think, it's probably that I want us to be a church. I want us to be a church that's there for others' success, and to do the hard work of navigating that. So there's a couple of things I just want to touch on that are kind of concrete examples of where that's an opportunity for us at the moment. So the first is, on Sunday we mentioned about the meal with the Harbour Project that we are planning for in early November. So Sunday, November the 7th. Our plan on that day is to shut shop, that we're not going to gather in our normal way. We're not going to have a meeting like we normally do, but instead we are going to do the gospel. Instead of opening the Bible and preaching, we're going to be the gospel together. And that we are, in fact, going to open our building and invite neighbours from the nations, asylum seekers and refugees, to come and spend the afternoon, lunchtime with us, eating together, building relationships, connecting, welcoming them, just loving them, and having fun together over food. Just really wanting to open our hearts to our friends from the nations. And the reason for that is a whole number of things. And probably the key is that over the period of lockdown, the Harbour Project, who are an organisation in Swindon who are serving 600 refugees and asylum seekers, probably even more now, we really do sense that God has given us a relationship with those guys to care for sojourners, aliens, strangers who are living in different lands. Is actually a biblical imperative on the church. It's not just an option for us. It's not just something we do begrudgingly, but it's actually God's heart. And so, as through the lockdown, Harbour Project who do this as an organisation. They care for refugees and asylum seekers across our town. They've been using our building for all kinds of things, for English classes, for serving these families and individuals, and just helping them navigate life in the UK, being a connecting point for them. And they've been using the building regularly. In fact, they've been using the Trinity Centre more than anybody else over this lockdown period. And Emma Pickering's just done a great job just serving at the Harbour Project with the building facility, and has really just helped to begin to build that relationship, a genuine sense of trust, a love for these guys, and through that time we've just felt like God has begun to join our heart with them. It's not something we went looking for. I mean, it's a privilege and we should be looking for it, but it just feels like something that God has given to us, this relationship with the Harbour Project, and we want to cheer them on in what they're doing, because it absolutely is a kingdom value. It's absolutely God's heart that to care for people who are modern day orphans and widows, who are modern day sojourners in different lands, who have found themselves through various circumstances and challenges just living in foreign nations as aliens and strangers. And it's a kingdom value, and these guys and the Harbour Project are modeling a kingdom value. And we really sense that we want to serve the Harbour Project in their mission. So as part of us looking beyond our borders, it's not just simply, well, let's just give them a bit of money. It's, we want to partner with them. We want to strengthen them. We want to encourage them. We want to cheer them on, because it's what they're serving into is a kingdom value, and it absolutely has caught our heart. But more than that, we want to build relationship with the families that they're serving, and just recognize that for many of those who the Harbour Project are serving, they are living in a place where they know no one. They don't have relationship, particularly not even with one another. So that's one thing we've realized in talking to the Harbour Project, that actually for lots of the people who Harbour Project are serving, their relational connection is actually with the Harbour Project team. And so we just sense we have a real opportunity to bless those guys and to build relationship. And we're kind of processing, now we can be back together. What should we do? A party? Should we just have a celebration one Sunday? And we just recognize that. And as we were talking about it, just had a real sense that actually what God's done in this time is he's given us new neighbours who are actually very close to us in location in West Swindon. And we want to give ourselves to that. We want to have a time where we throw a banquet where we partner with them. And so that's the plan. And so on the 7th of November, we want to invite us as a church, not just to serve a meal for the Harbour Project, but each one of us to be a part of that meaningfully, and to have a real faith for connecting with our neighbours from the nation. And so there's just a couple of things I want to say into that. We'll put all of this in an email to you of how to sign up and how to engage with it, put all the detail of it in place. But simply to say, we want each one of us, you guys, to be involved in this. And we're going to need whole loads of people involved. It doesn't work. If just the Harbour Project turn up and Gateway don't, it doesn't work. If just Gateway turn up, well, fine, we'll just have a nice meal together. But to make this work well, we need lots of people involved, both to host our visitors by sitting and eating and chatting with them, and also to serve in all kinds of different ways. It's going to take a big serving team to make this happen well, both in setting up, decorating the room, stewarding, serving kids in different ways, praying, clearing up. There's a whole, we've just been talking about it this week, what's it going to take? There's a whole number of roles that are going to need filling, and people putting their hand up and go, happy to do that, happy to sit and eat and talk and get to know somebody from the nations. And so basically what we're asking is that if you want to be involved in any capacity, that you sign up. We'll send the details for that. But the condition is this: it's not simple. We don't want to rock up as a church and just spectate and just rock up just because it's going to be some nice food. We want to engage. In fact, I just want to say this wasn't actually in my script at all, but even on Sundays, as we gather with one another, can we also do the same as we gather on Sundays? That we don't have teams in place serving. We don't have leaders set in place to gather teams at the moment, whether it's practical things like stewarding or setting up the room or teas and coffees. And I want to call us out on that and say, come on, let's be a family. Let's look around as we gather and see what needs doing and just step into those gaps. We ain't putting on a show. We're a family that are there to serve one another. And it doesn't matter who, it really doesn't. But on Sunday, I heard somebody saying, oh, I see we're not ready, because all the 9:30 or whatever it was in the morning, or 10 o'clock, the chairs went out, and no, the room wasn't ready. But rather than everybody kind of going, right, let's get the chairs out, somebody just said, you're not ready. Well, we're a family. Let's serve one another. We haven't got teams at the moment, just step into the gap, whether that's helping with teas and coffees, serving the room, saying, what do you need me to do? Can I just ask us to excel in serving at this moment as we regather? But back to the meal. So our plan is to have a meal. We're going to We've invited caterers to come in and do that, so we haven't got focus on the cooking. And we really want to just host our visitors so well and serve them, to connect with them, to build relationships. We've come up with all kinds of ways of helping fuel conversation and making it easy for us to engage with people we might not even know the language. And some of them will not speak very much English, if any at all. And so it's going to be a whole fun afternoon of connecting and sharing stories and getting to know people. And just as I've kind of begun to imagine what I think it looks like, I'm just so excited as believing God for relationships to be formed. Relationships will go on many, many years. So we're going to put that down into an email. We'll send it out. Please do sign up quickly. The other aspect of it is that there are limited spaces, because we want to leave space for visitors. So you need to be quick to sign up. But also just to say, if you are not able to join in back in our gatherings at the moment because of needing to isolate for health reasons, we're going to have a Zoom gathering and ask you guys to gather and be part of the time by praying for the event and just carrying it in prayer as we do that in person. So yeah, November the 7th. As soon as you get the email in your inbox, can I just ask that you be quick to respond, because time is short. We felt it was right to go for it, even though time's short on this one. So that's one area that we really feel this sense of partnering locally, and actually it's a thing that as a church we get to step into. It's not just a few people who are connecting with the Harbour Project. This is us being able to connect with neighbours from the nations and to build relationships and love and serve and honour those who have come from afar and who are living among us. And so it's a really meaningful relationship, and God has really genuinely caught our attention with that. There's just a couple of other things that I want to help put shape around. What does it mean to look beyond our own border locally? That I just want to, things of celebration really. So many of you will know about Pendle Community Church, that about 3 years ago-ish now, Tom Price from Discovery set out to plant a church in Pendle, and he and we did it in such a way that just had faith to say, let's not just make it a Discovery thing or a Gateway thing, but let's ask and invite churches from across Swindon to send people to go and partner with this, that it's actually again something that we model, that we do together. And that's exactly what's happened. So Tom has gone with people from about 5 different churches who've committed to that, who have gathered and for the last 3 years have been meeting. Of course, lockdowns really disrupted them from a church plant point of view. That hasn't stopped them at all. And it's just a remarkable story of God's favour and faithfulness and God's provision, and actually I believe God's blessing where brothers have dwelt in unity together. And so Tom has gathered people from all different kinds of church backgrounds, all with different expectations of what churches and gatherings should look like, this and those kind of dynamics, and yet God has really blessed those guys. And there's just some remarkable things, one of which is that Pendle Community Church was given a building from the Brethrens, the Brethren Hall, and they have so they've taken over that building right in the heart of Pendle Community, and through a provision of other churches and individuals, they've been able to renovate the building. Literally, God provided virtually every single penny they needed. I think it was £22,500, and they received £22,000 from other churches to help renovate the space, and it looks fantastic. It's a real story of God's provision into that community and into that church community, and so that's just amazing that not only have people gone from different churches, but churches have given into that, and we as a church, we gave some finances to help with the building also, but alongside that, there's a couple called David and Anarette who have been at Swindon Evangelical, and they've connected in with Pendle Community Church and have actually moved there into Penhill as a family, to engage, to serve, to be a part of Pendle Community Church. And Tom has eyed up David now for quite a while. I remember a couple of years ago he said to me, I think I know who I need to get hold of to take on the leadership of Pendle Community Church in the days ahead. And he said, it's this guy David. And I'd never met David. I didn't know him. And Tom kept talking about this young guy David who he believed was meant to take on leading the church one day. Anyway, cut a long story short, a number of months back, maybe 4 months ago, a guy called Dave Davison from Freshbrook Church messaged Nigel, Tom and myself, and just said, I wonder if we should ask the churches in Swindon for some finance to release David Cece. This is Penn Hill David, to release David Cece to 1 day a week into a pastoral role to serve the church, to serve the community there. And he just said, I just wonder if that would really help the church to establish itself in the community, to get going in a new way. So Tom isn't full-time. He's now head teacher at Maranatha Christian School. And so David from Freshbrook was saying, I think we should enable some of David Cece's time to serve the church. The reality is, as you know, Penn Hill is an incredibly deprived area in Swindon. In fact, nationally, it ranks in the top 10%, Dawn was telling me yesterday, of national areas of deprivation. And so it's an area of incredible challenge. And so it doesn't have the finance in and of itself to do this, or not easily by any means. And we just felt faith rising for this, going, yeah, let's enable Penn Hill. Let's give into this. And so as a church, we've given finance into that, along with about 3 other churches, to release David Cece 1 day a week to serve the church. And I think it was just a month ago now. Just a month ago, David started working for the church, and we've been able to help make that happen as a church. And it's just such a joy that, like, we are literally, it's not just having nice conversations about unity with the church in the town. We're actually actively partnering with others from other churches to bless other areas of Swindon, to be a part of that. And it's not just those guys, that's us there too. Kevin and Dawn are there, Rebecca and Hubert DeVos, and others from Gateway have gone and have really given themselves and committed themselves to that place. So that's incredible. It's something worth celebrating, that God has provided, and God is so blessing that the church there, and just the stories that are coming out of people that they're connecting with in the community, people who have found faith in Jesus. They are real people with real stories, and God is really encountering them and blessing them. So I wanted to share that, because I don't want that to go as kind of side news. That is something that God has really caught our heart with. 2 more things just quickly. Safe Families and Starting Point. Safe Families and Starting Point are 2 relatively new Christian organisations that have sprung up in Swindon. Safe Families, Shirley Baxter's been engaged with, working for them and engaged with them for quite a while now. And more recently, Helen Howarth has started working for them. But across us as a church, and in fact many churches across Swindon, are volunteers serving Safe Families as volunteers serving different families in need, in crisis of various levels, and really just serving the need of Swindon in that way. And again, God is doing something remarkable through Safe Families. It really has that sense of God's blessing on it, and God's provision, and churches are excited and engaged with it, and we're excited and wanting to serve them in their mission, to really help them to further what they're doing. And we want to cheer that on. Again, it's not a Gateway thing, but we really sense, God's blessing is on this. We want to cheer them on and help them in what they're doing. And likewise, Starting Point, a new organisation, that's probably about 5 years old, started in Reading, but are now branching out to Swindon and Milton Keynes. And they're working with 16 to 25-year-olds who are not in education, employment and training. And when the guy Sam Lloyd first came to Swindon, who's going to be heading it up in Swindon, Nigel met with him, and I met with him, and just again really sensed, this is something that God's favours on. We want to get behind these guys and support them. So we're working with Patton to make that happen. Pattern Church, and we've given some money to them, as well as the church. We want to bless them in what they're doing. Emma, my wife Emma, she just went for a job interview with them as a mentor coordinator, and so she got that job, which is great. So she's happy. We're excited. But again, it just feels like another one of those things of God strengthening relationship with Christian organizations. The reason I say that isn't just as information, but I think this is quite a different way for us and how we've thought before of what it looks like to engage with the town, to work with others, to intentionally partner with others. We haven't got to do everything. There are others with incredible gifts and vision that we get to strengthen and partner and resource and stand with in this moment. Yesterday, I just met with Dawn briefly, Dawn Prosser, for an hour and a half. We had a coffee. I went and saw Renew Men in Sheds in the heart of Penn Hill, where Kevin and Dawn are really serving into, just remarkably serving that community, real practical, hands-on, working with people, blessing people, praying with people, supporting people in all kinds of ways in life. And it's just amazing, and what they've done with the space there. And Dawn said to me, she said, we're not doing bad in Pendle Community Church, 27 adults and 2 buildings, neither of which we've had to pay for. She said, I think God's pretty happy with this place and what's happening here. And just, they are doing an incredible thing. And God is, I really want to finish by saying this, God is doing something new in Swindon. He is calling us to work with others, to partner with others, to not be about our own thing, but to really look to the needs of others and strengthen them in that. We feel we've got a part to play. But it's not just happening in Swindon. Actually, right across the nation, we've begun to connect in with a network of networks, if you like, where they're working to help this kind of thing happen right across the nation. In fact, globally, and in different areas and regions, churches are learning to work together, to support one another, to further God's kingdom where they are. And so the reason we want to major on this to say, Gateway, we've got to work at getting this into our heart, is because I really believe this is part of the new era. God is calling us to a higher standard of unity, not just saying, yeah, there are other churches and we bless you, but to say, no, we've got to work together with churches and leaders and Christian organizations and releasing ourselves among us as a family to partner and work with others. So that's shaping a lot of our thinking at the moment. And it's going to take much more of our resource. We want to become much more generous towards that. And in the days ahead, we want to give a whole load more money and people and time resource to helping make this happen, these kinds of things, as well as working with other churches, serving other churches in various ways. So I've actually gone well over my time. My apologies. I realise there's quite a lot to digest. Does anybody have a question just off the bat that you're kind of going, I'm confused, or you want to say something positive? We haven't got long, so first come, first served. All right. Fine. You can always put questions in the chat or just message us afterwards. That'd be really helpful. And with reflections as well, that'd be really good. I just want to take, let's take just a couple of minutes and just pray into that, if that's okay. That this for us really has got our attention. We're wanting to serve this. So, but I want it to begin to really seep into us as a church, that we together carry it as a passion. So, Phil, if you could put us into breakout rooms of 3, something like that would be great. Into groups of 3s for 3 minutes, and everybody gets 1 minute to pray into this. Everybody gets 1 minute to pray. God, strengthen us, resource us, put it in our hearts. Thanks, Phil. That's fab. Nigel, over to you.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Nice to see you. So part 2 is focused on the nations. So I'm just going to give you a quick update. Hopefully won't take too long, and then we'll pray into that as well. But as Colin said at the beginning, I guess the whole thing of our part in the expansion of Jesus's kingdom in the nations has always been in our DNA, in our genes. Colin referred to the prophetic word from the beginning of the church: build locally, think internationally. And I think I guess it's sort of parallel really with what Colin's been saying about what God is doing with us locally, is that I think we have a sense that we need to kind of rediscover some of our foundations in working into the nations at the same time as working locally. And our feeling is that just as it is happening locally, that this will be based around relationship and partnerships in particular, and that we need to really focus on one or two places where we've got relationship and where God is calling us to partner intentionally. And we kind of need to really give ourselves to that in a fresh way in this new era, just as we are doing locally. I think it was a prophetic word from Julian Adams, actually it might have been the one I quoted on Sunday, but where he talks about, what you do in the nations, you'll do locally, and what you do locally, you'll do in the nations. And I think there's some of that sense about this new era. And as we've talked as elders recently with Steve Oliver, who leads Regions Beyond, our family of churches, we meet with him very regularly as elders. And as we've been chatting to him recently, he's kind of had the same sense as we have, really, that actually this is the way that we need to increasingly operate as within the Regions Beyond family of churches, that we need to kind of work out where are these key partnerships that God's giving us, and really intentionally invest into those and build those relationships. Because otherwise the danger is that Regions Beyond is just this kind of vague, amorphous kind of entity out there that we're not quite sure about, really. But if we can kind of invest in and work on the particular partnerships that God's gives us, then that'll, I think, bring to life what God is doing across our family of churches and help us to kind of play our part in the nations. So that's kind of, we've been very intentional about that recently. As we've met with Steve, we've kind of talked about where would those partnerships be, what do we feel is in our heart, but also what does he see as he kind of looks over the family and oversees the family of churches. And this is not really rocket science, it won't surprise you, but I guess the two key areas where we really want to be more intentional again in the days ahead is Burundi and the relationship we have there, with which many of you will have heard about, with Donna and the rest of the team, and Citygate Church in Bujumbura. That's the first one. And then secondly, with Dichlabeng Church in Clarens in the Free State in South Africa, which is where Steve Oliver is based again now. Having been in Dubai and in the UK, he's now back at the church that he planted and founded, which is really kind of the roots and the DNA of Regions Beyond, if you like. And so we really want to give ourselves to kind of working out with those two churches in particular, what does it mean to partner more intentionally with them in the days ahead. So there's various conversations that will be going on in the next kind of weeks and months, and we'll kind of keep you updated as we go on with that. Just to very briefly just talk about those two. So Burundi, I mean, many of you will have followed the story with Burundi. Donna Bloomfield, who heads up the work there and really has pioneered an amazing work based in Bujumbura, but influencing really, beginning to influence more and more across that nation. She was obviously part of Gateway for many years, and many of you will have kind of journeyed that story as things have really taken off on the ground, and she's served with Foundations for Farming and just served the poor and the broken in many ways, and now seeing Citygate Church really planted and kind of taking off. I guess the relationship's kind of been a bit more up and down since Donna moved on from Gateway, but we really want to kind of get back to intentionally having a plan of how do we support, how do we build that relationship, how do we interact more effectively, pray for the things that are going on out there, communicate the stories of what's happening. And so we'll tell you more about that in the days ahead. But just a diary date, our next monthly evening prayer meeting on Monday, the 18th of October, will be kind of focused around Burundi. What we're trying to do with the prayer meetings at the moment is really these partnerships that God is really leading us to focus in, whether they be local or international. Each time we gather to pray, we really want to bring one of those partnerships and really pray into it. So last time in September, we got Andrew Williams to share, and we really prayed about Gateway Furniture, and some of the doors are opening within Swindon and the things that are going on with them. That was September. So October, we're going into the nations, and we're going to get Donna to join us, hopefully, and pray into some of the stuff that's going on with Burundi. Again, some of you will have been there in August when Donna was here with us, and just really wanted to come and just say thank you for that amazing offering that that as Gateway we took up earlier in the year. So just again to say thank you for that, because that really has enabled a breakthrough, I think she would say, in the new building that they've been able to lease in Bujumbura, which will be a base for their foundations for farming and for the church. And so a real big step up for them. So watch this space really in the days ahead. And just to say also that we really believe that Donna and her gift is a gift to us as a church as well. So we'll be looking for ways to kind of receive from her and get her gift kind of interacting with us and activating us as a church as well. So that's one partnership in that way. And then there's Dichlabeng in South Africa. As I say, real kind of grassroots church in terms of Steve and his gift, and Regions Beyond, where Regions Beyond started in many ways. And Steve was really pioneered, not only serving the poor, but bringing together black and white in that location and building a church that went out from there with very little material resource, but really went out to the nations. And so I think that partnership for us is really significant. Again, there's many relationships within Gateway. A number of you would have been on teams in the early days when Mark Thornett was leading Gateway. There were many teams that went out. I'm trying to wave a hand if you've been to Dichlabeng over the years. Yeah, there's a few hands. But really wanting to re-establish that now that Steve's back there, and they have really been through a hard time in terms of COVID in South Africa. It's really hit them hard. They haven't been able to meet for a long time. They're just beginning to regather, and Steve's doing what Steve does, which is to gather again and raise leaders. And so I think there'll be some exciting stuff happening on the ground there again in Dichlabeng in South Africa. And just as we were talking to him the other day and kind of talking about how might we develop this partnership, he's very practical about it. And he's like, right, in a year's time, next October, I want you guys to bring a team out and come and learn and serve and kind of just build that relationship and really partner with us again. So that's something if that kind of triggers something in you and that's an exciting possibility, then chat to us more. But we'll be planning towards taking a team for sure next October. But again, like Burundi, really just in the meantime, looking at how can we tell the stories better, really partner with them, pray for them, hear what's happening over there. So we really want to invest into those two. The other one, just to say, of course, is France, and Rob and Sabina on the call with us this evening, which is brilliant. That's not quite at the same stage as Burundi and Dichlabeng in that way, but you know, God has done something significant, I think, particularly, well, we've always kept the relationship with Rob and Sabine ever since they went to France. How many years ago? I can never remember. Is it like 5 years? Is that 5 or 10? Do I add those together? No, 5. Anyway, we've kind of watched on and we've prayed for them at different points, but it's amazing what God's done in the pandemic, because as you know, you will have experienced as a church family, they've kind of really joined back in with us through Zoom and all the rest of it, and have actually been a real blessing to us as well, guys. So thank you for the way you've spoken in and encouraged us and brought prophetic stuff and all the rest of it. So we're really, again, it's a bit different, but we're really wanting to just support them as well in any way we can and follow their journey and see what God's doing and be praying for them consistently as well. And we'll just see how God leads us with that one, really. That's at an earlier stage, but we're just watching on and seeing, God, how do you want to shape that? And we know that you've put them there for purpose, and we really want to be behind that and praying for them and supporting them in any way that we can. So that's also on the list. And I guess then apart from that, there's so many nations amongst us and relationships with different nations amongst us at Gateway that we always just want to be aware of, God, what do you want to do with those different connections that all sorts of individuals have got amongst us? And just seeing, God, how would you lead us in that? praying into different nations that we've got links with when we get the opportunity. So obviously aware of that, and the whole thing with Harbour and serving refugees is part of that as well. That obviously, but that's what we're thinking in terms of the days ahead, and kind of just, I guess the summary is just being more intentional about the particular ones of those relationships, and more on that in the days ahead, really. But maybe we could do what we did with the local and spend a few minutes just praying for, pick one of these or all of them, whatever in your breakout room. So Donna, they're just getting going with this new building. They've just gone into it. It'll be their base for training. And increasingly, they're getting opportunities to train people from across the nation of Burundi. They've got prophetic words about serving that whole nation in terms of helping to bring it out of poverty. And so really just pray for Donna, pray for Marungwa, pray for the team, anything that God leads you in there. For Dichlabeng, just pray for them as they get going, get re-established, gathering again, raising leaders again. Steve using his gift across that region and into Lesotho, but just pray for God's blessing on that. And then also with France, pray for Rob and Sabine, that God would lead them in the days ahead, where they are, bless them with relationships, and especially if you've got them in your breakout room, of course, pray for them as well. So as God leads, Phil, can we do the same as we did with local and go for some breakout rooms?
Thanks, everyone. Al, over to you.
Okay. So I just want to finish up with something, I guess, that really cuts across all of that, really, and across all we are as a church family, which is really around the whole thing of prayer. And what does it mean for us to be a community of prayer, really? I think, over the pandemic, we really sense that God is speaking to us and has been about the centrality of prayer in us as a community. And one of the things that Colin was talking about earlier was around things that we're really wrestling with and living with as elders. And we want to say that we believe that prayer will mark the church in the new era. That prayer is going to be the engine room of us as a community going forward. And that is to mark us as a community, both individually, at a personal level, but also for us corporately, as a family. And I guess we want to say that we want to make prayer a priority for us as a family. We want that to be something that is the leading edge of us as a community, that really shapes how we operate, where things are birthed from, how we function, what we give our time and attention and energy to more and more, that becomes kind of higher priority than it ever has been before. But I guess the question is then, or how do you make prayer a priority in the life of a church, if you like? Well, it starts with us personally, of course, and us personally pursuing Jesus, being in his presence, enjoying time with the Father in the place of prayer, where we are, where we find ourselves day to day. And we really want to say and keep encouraging each of us to form personal rhythms of prayer in our own lives, in our homes, in our families, in our personal walk with Jesus. And if you've never ever managed to establish a habit of prayer in your own life, now is the moment. I want to really kind of exhort you and encourage you to find 15 minutes a day to start with, just to say, God, I want to come and be with you. I'm going to open up the book of Psalms and I'm just going to allow you to speak to me. If you find that hard, find one or two other people that you can just say, hey, can we get together on a semi-regular basis and just pray together because I'm struggling on my own. This is a season for us to get hold afresh, I believe, of prayer at a personal level and a sense of intimacy, of walking with Jesus ourselves. But also that has to spill out into what it looks like for us as a family. And we know that all that we've talked about this evening, all that we are living with as a church family, unless we're seeking God for it, unless we are really giving ourselves to the place of prayer, we're simply coming up with good ideas on our own. We're simply leading from a place of our own strength or our own wisdom, which, quite frankly, we don't have the wisdom or the strength in ourselves. We were never meant to have the strength in ourselves. We were always meant to be dependent on him and seeking his face in all things. And so we want to say, corporately, collectively, we are going to make prayer a high priority. And there are loads of opportunities for us to gather to pray as a church family. First of all, there is still going on the 8 a.m. prayer meeting every single day of the week, Monday to Friday, which has been going on now for 18 months, ever since the start of the pandemic. And I just want to honor Graham, who really kicked it off way back at the start of the pandemic. And there's still a good core group of people who are meeting every morning to pray across churches across the town, just to seek God, to start the day, half an hour. And that is incredible. And I just want to say that is still there every single day of the week. Then at 9 a.m. every Sunday morning, we are meeting in person before the not really before the gathering. What we want to say is the gathering starts at 9 o'clock. We want to come at 9 a.m. on Sunday mornings and meet to pray, not just so that we have a nice meeting together, but so that we meet with Jesus and we are encountering his Holy Spirit. And so I just want to ask and invite you, if you can be there for 9 o'clock on Sundays regularly to pray, or if you can't get there for 9, we pray for about 45 minutes or so. Come when you can, gather to pray in person, just to fuel one another in life and in faith and to seek his face together. And then lastly, as Nigel mentioned earlier, we are also gathering once a month, third Monday of the month, I think it is, on a Monday evening to really pray into projects and other things in the town. And so we really want to encourage you to make those a priority. So there's loads of opportunities to pray, but there's just one thing I just want to say that we're going to start launching from this coming month, which is a monthly prayer update for us as a family. We're very aware that often it can feel like there maybe is a big gap between kind of what we're living with as leaders and what we're dreaming about, what the needs, what the situations are before us, and how we can share and communicate those, and how we can call us as a family to be praying for those. So what we wanted to say is that from this month, we're going to be doing a monthly prayer update to us as a family that will really fuel and direct our prayers together across Gateway. It will enable us to share what's happening in the life of Gateway, what needs and opportunities are before us, things that we're living with, things that we're looking ahead to. And really the idea is that we want to kind of say all that we are living with and all that is before us, we want to share together and say we are going to seek God for these things and believe that it's in the place of prayer that there is breakthrough. And so this monthly prayer update will be something that will come through to you by email, and it'll just be really to fuel you where you are into praying into the life of us as a community, into the life of Gateway and all that we are living and believing for. And it's not really just about communicating information, but really that prayer, that it would fuel the heartbeat of prayer for us as a family, that it would fuel us to say we are going to commit to seeing breakthrough in different areas for us as a church, really. And we're going to be sending out some info back end of this week into early next week about it. We're going to say it's a sign up thing. So we want to encourage you and invite you to sign up to commit to praying. Because I think that kind of something we want to ask each one of us to buy into, to saying we want to commit to praying together for breakthrough and for all that is before us as a family. There are so many opportunities. There are so many things that are kind of really ahead of us as a family. And we want to lay them down together and say, we want to seek God for these things. Of course, we'll pray for them when we gather corporately, but we also want to fuel us and help direct and shape our prayers in the everyday where we are. So look out for details coming out about that within the next few days. We just want to say we want to fuel prayer in us, and we want to help do that, and also want to help just increasingly share our heart as elders and what we're living with and where we're heading and things that are coming up in our diaries and all those sort of things that will just fuel us and help kind of guide us, and really believe that that'll be the place of breakthrough. And wouldn't it be amazing if kind of every month 100 or more people across Gateway were just committing to seeking God for breakthrough in different things? Imagine the power, imagine what will happen, imagine the breakthrough that we'll see as we give ourselves to prayer in this way. So look out for the details of that that come out. I think Colin will be sending that out in the next few days. And I would really just want to invite you to come and be a part of this and receive this email and use that to fuel your prayers for all that's happening for us in the life of the church, really. So that's it, kind of in terms of prayer. Just want to really kind of say prayer will mark the church. That's what we're believing for in the days ahead. And in a moment, I don't know if there's any questions that come up on the chat, we'll finish by praying together. We won't go into breakout rooms. I'm going to encourage us to unmute ourselves and really just spend a couple of minutes just praying out loud together for God to come and move and breathe over all that we've shared tonight and other things and the life of us, a community, that he would birth in us a fresh hunger for seeking his face and his presence in and through prayer. So we'll come back. That's how we'll land in a minute. So Colin, I'll come back to you. I don't know if there's been any questions or anything.
Not really. A couple of comments, but Rona, I think we've absolutely talked about looking to do another kind of prayer campaign. Sorry if that makes it sound slightly clinical, but just calling us together to pray with a kind of focused, exerted effort. I think we're looking at the new year for that now in reality, to do that. But I want to echo one thing that Al said as he was talking about prayer, and that is simply to say, not only can we foster prayer in our own lives and praying for Gateway and just life and family and things that are going on, but Al mentioned about gathering in 2s and 3s to pray, and I want to just say this with all sincerity, that we as elders, we are kind of seeking to put prayer much more centrally in terms of what we're doing with our times when we're gathering. Not just, man, it's easy to talk, let's be honest, and it's easy to bring our thoughts and opinions and that to the table, and that kind of just be how our time's suddenly gone. And so we're just much more intentionally wanting to start by seeking God together and for us as a church. And so we're doing that journey too. Emma and I had a coffee with, we went for lunch with Stephen and Linda Walker the other day, and just had a great time hearing their story and just talking and just really, just one of those times of just God joining hearts again. And there was something they said about prayer that just, I thought, gosh, I've got a lot to learn in this. So they said, sorry to talk about you guys and put words in your mouth, so feel free to correct me if I get this wrong. But he said, just want to say sorry we haven't connected in with the 8 a.m. prayer meetings, and which is totally fine. It's not a have to. But they said the reason we haven't is because we've always, at that time in the morning, we've just started our day together by praying together for our family, for ourselves, for the church, for different things and pieces, bits and pieces that God's always put on our heart. And that's just been our rhythm, and we don't want to lose that rhythm in our life if we step out to do something else. And I just thought, oh my goodness, it doesn't matter that you don't turn up to 8 a.m. And I just felt so, just knowing that like there is that kind of quality of prayer going on and just that rhythm in life. And I just felt so provoked in God as I came away from lunch with you guys. And I encourage us to one another this moment. And some people are going to find this easy, and some people find it easy to get into groups and pray in groups and harder on their own. But Al mentioned about gathering in 2s and 3s. I really do sense that this is probably a season for 2s and 3s and not just being on our own. And that doesn't mean don't pray on your own. I don't mean that, but I mean ask God to put people in your life that you say, let's make prayer. Let's make prayer and discipleship with one another into God, into prayer, just a key part of our life in this moment. And I think that's something that we can really push into. It doesn't take lots of organizing. It just takes, again, an intention, a decision. And that's why, as Al said, we want to put the sign up for this prayer update as a sign up thing, because prayer is a decision of the will. It's a decision of the heart. It's an intentional thing. So are there any questions? No. Al, do you want to leave some praying from?
I just love us to finish by crying out together, just for God's kingdom to come, for us as a family, whatever's stirring your heart right now. Like, we're not going to be able to hear each other because we're going to kind of all be through our headphones or our speakers, but just for a few minutes, just corporately crying out to God, and just declaring kind of our love for him, speaking out our heart, our prayers for some of what we've heard tonight, for other things that's on our heart, whatever it might be. and let's go for it together just for a few moments, and then it'll die off, but something happens as we collectively cry out as God's people. I do believe that, corporately interceding. So can I just encourage you now just to unmute yourself, and we are just going to go for it for a few moments. And if you don't want to unmute yourself, that's fine too. But let's just cry out to God.